Lesson 4, Unit 1. Monitoring results. Monitoring and evaluation are the fourth step of the results project management cycle. Inputs include the implementation plan and the performance framework. Outputs include the performance target results, monitoring reports, and the recommendations from the evaluation. Results-based monitoring is the continuous process of gathering, organizing, and analyzing information on key indicators and then compare the actual results with the planned or expected results. Monitoring occurs during the life of the project and it's a continuous process of measuring progress towards the short-term, medium-term, and even the long-term results identified in the results framework. Monitoring gives information on where the project is at any time relative to its targets and outcomes. Traditional implementation-focused monitoring is usually designed to address compliance with the contractual obligations around the scope, schedule, and budget. It seeks to answer these questions. Is the project using all the inputs? Is the project completing activities on time? Is the project delivering the planned outputs? This traditional approach focuses on monitoring and assessing how well a project is being implemented in relationship with its plan. It has a focus on delivering the products or services. However, this approach does not provide managers, donors, and key stakeholders with an understanding of the success or failure of the project in achieving results. A project success is usually measured on its ability to implement within the constraints of scope, schedule, and budget, but it does not always mean that the project has produced the actual results it intended. It's important to shift from a focus of only monitoring activities to include monitoring results. There is a gap between what is in control of the project and what is outside the control of the project. And that is the reason why there is a need to monitor results. If the outputs the project is delivering are not creating results, then the project manager needs to reevaluate the project, find ways to reformulate its implementation strategy, and make the necessary changes to achieve the targets identified in the results framework. A project has various areas that needs to be monitored. This includes output monitoring, outcome monitoring, impact monitoring, and context monitoring. Each area has a different purpose and requires different approaches to collect and analyze the data and report on results. Output monitoring looks at the input activity output process and monitors their performance against implementation plans. Monitoring inputs includes the use of the resources assigned to the project and how the project is using these resources on the planned activities. For example, monitor the rate at which the budget is used. Will the project have enough money to complete all activities? Monitoring activities includes the completion of all the activities and the progress in the schedule to complete all planned work. For example, are there any delays in the schedule that can increase the cost of the project? Monitoring the delivery of products and services includes quality control of the deliverables. Do the outputs meet the quality standards for which they were designed? Do beneficiaries have problems or issues with the outputs? Monitoring the results of project implementation at the outcome level are core tasks of results-based project management. Outcomes are the changes that have been influenced directly or indirectly, partially or totally by the outputs of the project. Outcomes can be monitored at three levels: in the short term, medium term, and long term. Short term are changes in abilities, skills, knowledge, and awareness. Medium term are changes in behaviors, practices, and action. Long term are changes in conditions. This is usually referred as impact level results. Outcome monitoring seeks to know if the intended outcomes are being achieved and by how much. For example, how many beneficiaries are changing their water and sanitation practices. Not all projects will be able to monitor impact indicators. Changes at the impact level can only be detected in the long term. A project that is 3 to 5 years long may be able to monitor some of the impact results and use information to make changes to increase the impact levels of the project. For example, in a water and sanitation program, there may be a need to monitor the mortality rate change in children under 5. At this level, impact indicators are measuring the contribution of the project to long-term development goals, and it's also important to monitor both the intended and unintended consequences of the project. Monitoring is not only limited to indicators and targets. The project manager should also monitor the project context. Questions the project manager might ask include the following: are there new risks? Are the assumptions still valid? Are there any changes in the context? The project manager should monitor for new risks or changes in current risk. This will require a review of the original risk management plan and reevaluate the risk analysis estimates. For example, changes in probability and impact of current risk, identification of new risks. Assumptions are favorable and necessary conditions for the achievement of results at different levels. The project manager should monitor any changes on the original assumptions. For example, an original assumption stated that the school would provide resources, but due to changes in the school budget, there is no guarantee that will happen. Another area to monitor is the project context. Is the political, economical, social, technical, environmental, and legal context changing? How will those changes impact the project ability to deliver its planned results? Monitoring the environment is an important area of monitoring results. Monitoring follows a simple process during the life of the project. The regular elements of this process include an assessment of the readiness and capabilities of the project for results-based monitoring, definition of the performance measurement indicators and tools, the collection of data, the analysis and interpretation of the data, and reporting of the results. This is also a cyclical process. The reporting provides information to make the required changes to the process, to increase its efficiency and effectiveness in providing the information the project stakeholders need to make decisions. The first step is to assess the readiness and capabilities of all involved in the monitoring process. Results-based monitoring requires a considerable effort. It's important to evaluate the readiness of the project, the organization, and even partners on their capabilities for monitoring. This includes a review of the skills required of all actors that will be involved in the monitoring process, a review of the project budget assigned to monitoring and evaluation and other resources that are available, a review of the roles and responsibilities for monitoring of key stakeholders, and finally, an understanding of the scope of the monitoring requirements, including the needs of information from various stakeholders. The next step is the performance measurement framework, which is used to define all the indicators the project will monitor, as well as the information on the baseline data for each indicator, targets, sources of data, collection methods, frequency, and responsibilities. The framework provides a consistent approach for systematically collecting, analyzing, utilizing, and reporting on the performance of the project. The framework is a management tool that enhances the management and reporting of the project intervention by measuring the level of achievement of results. This is the tool the project manager will use to monitor the overall performance of the project. The next step in the monitoring process is data collection. The performance measurement framework identifies the type of data, the source of the data, the frequency to collect the data, and who is responsible for collecting data. In this step, the project will collect baseline data to determine the targets the project will use to measure performance. Collecting data will occur at various intervals during the project, depending on the type of data. The data collected will need to be organized so that it can be ready for analysis and reporting. This step includes the use of a monitoring and evaluation system to help the storage of the data and generate the required reports. The final step of the monitoring process is the interpretation of the data and reporting the results to key stakeholders. Analysis includes qualitative and quantitative analysis of the data collected, looking for trends, deviations, and changes. The project manager and the team will make conclusions and recommendations that will be incorporated on a report and communicated to key stakeholders. The results of the report will help make decisions to improve the performance of the project interventions and even improvements of the monitoring process. Results-based monitoring provides feedback on the performance of the project to the project manager, the project team, key stakeholders, the donor, and other decision makers who can use the information in various ways to improve performance. It's one of the most critical components of results-based project management. Monitoring provides information that will promote transparency and accountability. It is a management tool to take corrective action and help future planning and effective resource allocation. It also helps external and internal stakeholders have a clear idea of the status of the project, which increases their participation and ownership.